Hi, my name is Liam, and today I'm going to be showing you some logic principles and examples that will make your math life easier. This first example is best solved by writing out each of the names and moving them around on the line on the screen based on the clues that we are given. So the first clue is that Paul is taller than Joe, which means that we put Paul to here and Joe to here, because all we know is that Paul is taller than Joe, and we're ranking them from tallest to shortest. So we have to put Paul as taller than Joe. That's all we know just based on this one statement. The second statement is William is shorter than Paul. So William is shorter than Paul just means Paul is also taller than William. So what this means is that we put him as shorter than Paul on the line. The problem is we don't know if Joe is taller than William or William is taller than Joe. So this is just a placeholder. We're going to put them on top of each other for now. We will fix that right after this next clue. Eddie is taller than William, but shorter than Joe. Now we can use Eddie's height as a determining factor to figure out whether William is taller than Joe or Joe is taller than William. So Eddie is taller than William, but shorter than Joe. Therefore, Joe is taller than Eddie, and Eddie is taller than William, and Paul is taller than Joe. So therefore, the order goes Paul, Joe, Eddie, William. And that's how you solve that first problem. Okay, so for this next problem, it's pretty simple substitution. We were given these two baseline equations, and we have to use them to figure out the values of the square and the circle. So we know that the square times the circle is 45, and one square is the same as 5 circles. What this means we can do is we can substitute in the top equation, we can substitute that square for 5 circles times 1 circle, and that'll look something like this. From here, we can simplify this down to 5 times circle equals 45. Alright, now algebra says that we can divide both sides by 5, which will get us circle times circle equals 9. Alright, this is the same as circle squared equals 9, and now we just have to find a number times itself, which is equal to 9, and 3 times 3 equals 9, therefore circle is equal to 3, and so then we can go back to the top equation and substitute circle for 3, and then 3 times square is equal to 45, and then we can divide both sides by 3, and then we get square is equal to 15. Okay, so for this next problem, it's sort of similar to the last one, except it's a little bit different. So we have square plus circle equals 20, and square plus circle equals 22. Now what this means is that changing from a circle to a square increases the value of it by 2, which means changing one of these symbols, the only difference between the first half of each of these equations is that one has 2 squares and the other has 2 circles. However, changing one of those circles to a square increases the value by 2, which means that a square is worth a circle plus 2. Now, we can use that information on the second part of the problem, on the second equation, and we can substitute each of those squares for circle plus 2, which means that 3 circles plus 4 equals 22, which means that we can do subtraction, and so 3 circles equals 18, and then we can divide both sides by 3, since 18 is divisible by 3, and we find out the value of each circle is 6. Now all we have to do is go back to the first equation at the top and substitute each of those circles in for 6. So square plus 6 equals 20. From there, we can just subtract 12 from both sides, and 6 plus 6 equals 12. And then we have square equals 8. And that's the problem. Alright, So the last problem that I'm going to show you today is a grid problem. And the premise of the problem is that a soccer ball had a teacher, and then 3 students were suspected of kicking the soccer ball, and when they were questioned about it, only one of them told the truth. The best way to solve this problem is to look at each of the look at it as if like go through each scenario as if each of them kicked the soccer ball, and then based on the premise that that person kicked the soccer ball, examine everyone's statements and determine, based on assuming that person kicked the soccer ball, whether or not they're telling the truth or lying. Because only one of them can tell the truth, and if we find, and when we find the one that where only one of them tells the truth, that's the correct answer. So let's start with James. If James kicked the soccer ball, Sean is telling the truth when he says that he didn't do it. And Andy is lying when he says that he saw Sean kick the shot, because Sean didn't kick the shot in this situation because James kicked the shot. If James says that Andy lied, we've already established Andy is lying, therefore James is telling the truth. 2 people are telling the truth, which means that it's impossible, if only one of them was telling the truth, for James to have kicked the shot. Therefore, James is innocent. Now, let's say Andy did it. Sean is once again telling the truth because he didn't do it, Andy did it. Andy says it wasn't him, he saw Sean kick the shot. He's lying. In this version, it was him. And if James says that Andy was lying, then James is telling the truth, because we already established Andy's lying because in this version he did kick it and he says it wasn't, so he's lying. And so James saying he's lying, James is telling the truth. Now once again, we have 2 people who are telling the truth, therefore this is the wrong scenario. Now process of elimination tells us that we know it's Sean already. We already know it's Sean because he's the only person left who could have kicked it, but let's just go through the problem to just check ourselves. Sean says he didn't do it. He's lying. We already established that if Sean's the person who kicked the ball, and he says he didn't do it, he's lying. Andy is telling the truth because he says that he saw Sean kick the ball and that it wasn't him, which is correct because in this version Sean kicked the ball. And James says Andy lied, but we've already established Andy's telling the truth, which means that James saying Andy lied, James lied. Therefore, only one of them is left telling the truth, and that is Andy. And since only one of them is telling the truth, this is the correct scenario. Therefore, Sean is the guy who kicked the soccer ball.